Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Big XII, Golden Blue Dude. Hey, if you haven't already, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. I'd greatly appreciate it, and we're on our way to 5,000 subscribers, so you'll be a part of something big. This channel is home of at least one college football video every single day, and I'm going to throw in some basketball videos once the college football season starts winding down. So, yesterday I made a video about West Virginia not going to the ACC, staying put in the Big 12 because Shane Lyons said on a podcast that the ACC hasn't even reached out to West Virginia. And, you know, I was admitting that I was wrong, that West Virginia is not going to the ACC. My sources were wrong, and it looks like we're staying in the Big 12. Well, of course, I still talk to my sources, even after I made the video. My gosh, they're saying that the ACC did reach out to West Virginia, and that if Notre Dame agrees to this package deal with West Virginia, it's a done deal. That the percentage of West Virginia accepting that deal is above 99%. Now, if Notre Dame doesn't accept, then that drops down to like 5%, meaning the ACC probably wouldn't even want West Virginia. So there's that. And I am hearing from a lot of West Virginia fans that they would actually prefer us to stay in the Big 12 over the ACC because of financial reasons. Well, you got to remember, whenever Texas and Oklahoma leave the Big 12, even if the Big 12 does make more money than the ACC, it's going to be a much closer margin. And, you know, if West Virginia and Notre Dame were to go to the ACC, I think the TV deal would actually rise. So the margin could close even more, or the ACC could actually make more money. So it's not what you're seeing right now. The gap wouldn't be that big. And on top of that, let me ask you this. Who would you rather play on a yearly basis? I'm going to go through both conferences. First, the Big 12. Would you rather play these teams? BYU, Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, Houston, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State, UCF, Cincinnati. There's the first batch. And take into consideration, West Virginia fans, this is football and basketball. So there's the Big 12 batch. Or would you rather play Wake Forest, Florida State, Miami, Virginia, Duke, Georgia Tech, Clemson, NC State, North Carolina, Syracuse, Boston College, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, and Pitt on a yearly basis? Now, of course, we wouldn't play all those teams on a yearly basis, but for most of the time, we would see most of those names at least every other year or every 3-4 years, something like that. And if you're in the Coastal Division, you would definitely see Pitt and Virginia Tech, our biggest rivals, every single year. So, who would you prefer to play on a yearly basis is another big question. And then they mentioned that Shane Lyons hasn't even called a press conference to directly address West Virginia not going to the ACC and staying in the Big 12. And then they reminded me that West Virginia hasn't extended their Big 12 grant of rights, and that until West Virginia does that West Virginia staying in the Big 12 is not a done deal. This thing will not leave me alone. I tried to break free yesterday, but it drew me back again. So, you know, I'm sticking with, I think West Virginia is staying in the Big 12. That's what I'm sticking with for the time being. Just because of every time I say West Virginia is going to the ACC, then another thing pops out, you know, like the Big 12 expanded. They accepted Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, and UCF. And then, of course, Shane Lyons saying, you know, no, the ACC hasn't even reached out to West Virginia. So every time I say that my sources are saying that West Virginia is going to the ACC or that it's a high probability, something like that happens. So I'm going the reverse route, guys. I am going the reverse route. I'm going to stick with West Virginia is staying in the Big 12, and I'm okay with that, by the way. I'm okay with West Virginia staying in the Big 12. Would I love for them to go to the ACC? Of course. Geographically, it makes sense. It's perfect. And all the rivals, Pitt, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Boston College, Louisville, Miami, and then, of course, the rest of the ACC. Easy travel for me for away games. In fact, away games will be easier for me to travel to than a home game in Morgantown. So, of course, I would love for West Virginia to go to the ACC, but I'm sticking with West Virginia staying in the Big 12, and that's okay. That is okay, especially adding Cincinnati. At least one game is closer. UCF, that's about the same as the Midwest, so that doesn't add all that much travel. BYU, that's a different story, but I do think BYU will be in a different division. So here's where I'm standing right now. My mindset is I'm going to say West Virginia is staying in the Big 12, and maybe things will work the reverse now. Maybe they'll start making announcements saying that West Virginia is going to the ACC. Maybe it starts picking up steam now that I'm going to the other side and saying that they're staying with the Big 12, because my sources are not backing off from their story. They're not backing off, guys. Even after I made the video yesterday, even after I mentioned Shane Lyons saying that in the podcast, that they always rebutted, well, that was a podcast. That means nothing. Shane Lyons hasn't called his own press conference. West Virginia hasn't extended their Big 12 grant of rights. It all means nothing until that happens. And I agree with that. But at the same time, everything is pointing that they're not going to ACC and they're staying in the Big 12. So this thing has its hooks in me and will not let me go. I am trying to move on with my life. I am trying to move on to other stuff. I really, honestly, I just want to know, are we staying or are we going? That's it. At this point, yes, I prefer the ACC, but I'm okay with the Big 12. I am perfectly fine with that as long as we stay in a Power 5 conference. So this thing needs to come to a resolution because Gold and Blue Dude is wore out. This is one story that has completely zapped me of my energy, and I'm worn out. I'm worn out because of this one story, and it just won't let go, guys. It won't let me go in peace. So it's still got its hooks in me, but my stance has changed. I will say that. I am sticking with West Virginia is staying in the Big 12 until I start actually seeing stuff, announcements, updates, other news outlets saying something. Until I start seeing that, I'm going to have to stay with West Virginia, stay in the Big 12, because this has zapped way too much energy out of me. I'm laying this to rest for a while. This is going to be my last video on this particular subject for a while, unless some breaking announcement, some big time news happens. But for now, I'm going to lay this to rest right now, and I'm going to say that West Virginia is staying in the Big 12, hoping that it actually proves me wrong and West Virginia does end up in the ACC. But other than that, I'm done with this. I am done. I'm worn out, and it's time to move on. So there you go. My sources are still telling me that West Virginia staying in the Big 12 is indeed far from a done deal, and that the ACC did reach out to West Virginia, and if Notre Dame accepts the package deal, that West Virginia will be going to the ACC. So I guess what they're saying is it all centers around Notre Dame. Somebody announce something. That's all I'm saying. And not in podcasts. Like, have a press conference. Shane Lyons, call a press conference and say, this is what's happening. Because that's what I need to hear, and that's what the rest of us needs to hear, to be honest with you. Because I've milked everything that I could milk out of this story, and it's bled me dry. It's bled me dry. And I'm worn out, guys. I am worn out. That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.